Hello, my name is Matt Bauer. This is my crane jib that I modeled off of the Kessler's, I don't know, the KC8, I believe. It's their 8-foot crane. I had a picture and that I grabbed off the internet and kind of saw how it was designed and built my own. Now what I like about this setup is that I've got an existing tripod here, and I wanted to utilize that rather than lugging around an extra stand just for my crane. With the tripod head locked, I've got, the crane head stays perpendicular to my subject at all times, so I can unlock my head and then change that angle. Say I'm 45 here, and that translates equally to 45 degrees down at the end. I can lock it and it stays at 45 degrees no matter my elevation, which is nice. Now also, if we unlock this, you have a full range of motions. All of a sudden you have like, what, 3 axes. So you have your elevation, your tilt, and pan. So that's 3 degrees of freedom right there, and you can make some pretty complex shots with that. Elevate, track your subject, go around, and land all in one fluid motion. And of course that takes practice to make fluid, but we're all pros here, right? Not me. Anyway, no, I built this for 50 bucks. They're not complex. You could make them out of PVC if you wanted to. But anyway, this one's made out of aluminum, and I had some requests to show you guys how to make one, and so we'll do that. Okay, so you're going to need some tools to build your crane. What you're going to need is a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, a set of wrenches, a dead blow mallet, a bandsaw, hacksaw, a jigsaw, really anything that you can use that'll cut aluminum. You'll need a drill press, drill bits, taps, a deburring tool or bit, a file. You will need a 1/2-inch conduit bender, a box pan brake, or some way to bend thin aluminum. Okay, so to make the plugs, you're going to need a lathe. Now I understand that a lot of you don't have access to a lathe, so there is an alternative to this design that would eliminate the necessity for a lathe or to make 9 plugs, and that would be to replace this top beam with a 1-inch by 2-inch rectangular tubing, and that aluminum tubing would have a 1/8-inch wall thickness approximately, and you would just, everything else would be identical. The measurements, the spacing between each of the linkages, etc. would all be identical, except you just have you'd have 2-inch and a rectangular tube, but there again you wouldn't need to insert plugs throughout the beam. Okay, so materials that you're going to need. You will need 2 8-foot long, 1-inch diameter aluminum tubes, 3 feet of 1-inch diameter aluminum rod. You will need about 3 feet of 1-inch diameter by 1/8-inch thick aluminum bar, approximately 20 inches of 2-inch by 1/8-inch thick aluminum bar, 10 inches of 1.5-inch by 3/8, 6 inches of 4-inch by 1/4-inch aluminum bar, 4 inches of 1x1 square tube, that'll have an 1/8-inch wall, 17 inches of 1/2-inch diameter rod. You'll need a 1/4-inch 20 threaded knob. You'll need 2 1032 by 1/2-inch truss head screws, 7 832 by 3/8-inch button head cap screws. If we take a look inside the linkage assembly, you'll see we also need 2 of the 1/4 20 by 2.5-inch pan head screws, and 6 of the 1/4 20 by 2-inch screws. You'll need 8 1/4-inch 20 nylon lock nuts, 20 1/4-inch inner diameter fender washers, and 20 of the 1/4-inch inner diameter nylon washers. And you'll need 8 1/4-inch inner diameter, 3/8 outer diameter miniature ball bearings. So to make the plugs, I cut them all about 4-inch lengths from that 1-inch tube, stuck them in a lathe, and turned them down to almost perfectly match the inner diameter of these tubes, of these beam tubes. And then I used a steel pin and a dead blow mallet, and I forced them to the locations where they needed to be. And once they were in place, then I took the beams and measured and marked, and I used an 1/8-inch drill bit and a drill press, and I would drill straight through, piloting with that 1/8-inch drill bit first, and then opening those holes up to a 9/32 diameter hole so that my screws would fit snugly through. Okay, so the rest of these parts are going to be pretty straightforward, so we'll move a lot faster here. The linkage cross members, they are made from the 1-inch by 1/8-inch bar. You're going to cut that bar into 6 pieces, each with a length of 6 inches. You'll measure 1/2 inch in from the side and 1/2 inch down from the top. You'll make your first mark there. You drop down another 5 inches from that mark, and you'll make your second mark. You'll pilot those using an 1/8-inch bit, and then open those up using the 9/32 inch drill bit. And you'll do that 6 times, and you'll have your cross members. So for the jib head, I started off with a piece of 2-inch wide by 1/8-inch thick aluminum bar stock. I cut it at a length of 19 3/8 inches. At that point, from one of the edges, I measured across 8 inches down and made my mark there, and that is where I determined my bend point would be. Now I used a box pan brake. If you do not have one or have access to one, I'm sure you can figure out a method to get this aluminum bent. It might not be pretty, but I'm sure you'll come through. Now from the base of this bracket, I measured 1 1/8 inch up to make my first mark. Here again, there's a 1/2 inch from the side inward to get that center mark. From there, I measured 5 inches up to get my second mark. 1/8-inch drill bit pilots, open back up to 9/32. On the base, I've got several holes drilled out to 5/16, and what they're there for is just depending on the type of camera I use or the size of camera, whatever setup I'm using, I can position my camera wherever I need it to be. And so, I mean, it's not critical, the measurements of where you put your holes or any of that, just as long as they're there, so you can have you can use your knob to secure the camera to the head. Okay, there's an odd piece that you don't see on a lot of jibs, and that's the that 1/2 inch aluminum rod that kind of wraps around the top and inside of the camera. What that is there for is to maintain that 90-degree radius on that bend. We're using rather thin material, and it's going to flex under weight. So this just helps stabilize that whole structure. What I used was a conduit bender to get my radius, and then I cut it to the length that I needed. After that, I just drilled in on the ends and tapped using a 1032 tap, and then I just inserted my screws to hold it in place. The mounting plate is made from a 4-inch by 6-inch plate. It's a 1/4 inch thick. There is a hole drilled there to mount to the tripod. The dimensions pictured here are based off of my tripod. Yours may be different, so just adjust as necessary. Now there are 3 extra holes here that are used to mount to the 3/8 inch armature that comes off of this plate here. Okay, so the armature that comes off of your mounting plate, it's made from a 3/8 inch thick by 1.5 inch wide bar, and I cut mine to 10-inch length. That's the maximum length I could get without it interfering with my tripod. The next step, you want to measure from the top of your tripod's head to its tilt axis. And I don't know if they're standard for all tripods. I'm assuming they're not. So you'll want to take a measurement and figure out what your own tripod's axis is. Then just translate that dimension over to this bar. Once you get that dimension laid out and marked, you'll measure down exactly 5 more inches and get your second mark. Here again, you pilot with an 1/8 inch bit and open up to 9/32. On the end of this bar, you'll need to make 3 holes that mimic the holes on the top of the mounting plate that we drilled out earlier. Now these will be 3 screws that go through the mounting plate and into this armature. To make the armature more secure and rigid overall, I used a 1x1 by 4-inch square of aluminum tubing. And really all I did was cut some angles to help streamline the design a little bit. But really it's just an additional 4 screws, 2 on top, 2 on the side, that help secure the entire assembly. And so finally, to get the counterweights on the end of your beam, I just went ahead and got some of these springy retainer clips, and you can get them at like any fitness place. And my weights are just, I've got various size of weights, and they have what is it, 1.25 inches or 1 inch and 1/8 or something like that through hole, and they fit nice, like perfectly over my tubing here. And I just used 2 of these to keep them in place. Alright, I think that about wraps it up, and hopefully this tutorial will enable you to at least get an idea on how to build your own. Wish you the best of luck, and if you have any questions or anything, feel free to contact me, and time willing, I'll reply as I can. Alright, thanks a lot.